Hi there. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today on reimagining enterprise architecture and security. My name is Shaumin Ghosh. I'm Senior Assistant Editor at the Economic Times CIO and CISO. Now, the constantly evolving threat landscape, which entails sophisticated attack vectors, cloud adoption, and operating in hybrid environments, calls for a thorough reassessment and overhaul of enterprise architecture and security controls. Today's webinar is unique because we are going to bring you the perspectives from both PwC and Google Cloud. While PwC brings on board expertise in cloud transformation strategy, application modernization, security, and change management, Google Cloud offers solutions to modernize infrastructure, embrace microservices, leverage serverless computing, and adopt a data-driven approach with zero trust principles. So, let's go ahead with today's webinar. And to do that, let me welcome Vamsi Krishna, the head of cloud business at PwC. Vamsi, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure hosting you.
Thank you, Somik, and very pleased to be here.
Sure. We've also got Sandeep Agarwal, customer engineer and security specialist at Google. Hi, Sandeep. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Somik.
All right. Now, we've got a lot of ground to cover in today's webinar. We are going to be talking about overcoming challenges of legacy systems and also, why traditional architecture needs a kind of an overhaul to address today's security solutions. And to do that, I'm going to pass it on to Vamsi. So, Vamsi, go ahead with your introduction and share with us your observations and your experience, what you've been seeing at the enterprise level.
Absolutely. Again, very pleased to be here today with our partner Google for the session. Thank you to everyone who joined online, and thanks to the ETCIO team for facilitating the session. As Somik mentioned, I currently run PwC India's cloud consulting and transformation business. But for a large part of my career, I was an enterprise architect. So today's topics that me and my friend Sandeep will cover are extremely dear to me. And hopefully you will have some good takeaways from the session. What we thought we would do was first structure the conversation into two parts. One is really looking at today's landscape, the context for a lot of enterprises. And what does that mean in terms of the forces shaping our industry, forces that are demanding enterprises to build capabilities powered by technology, and how do we get there? So if you look at the first slide, I want to talk about the transformation and there are various ways to look at this transformation and its effects. I want to start first by focusing on the market in general. And I would like to highlight 6 key drivers that are reshaping our industry. First, the economics of computing have fundamentally shifted. What was once expensive and scarce is today available, accessible, and affordable, right? Second, AI isn't just evolving, it is revolutionizing, not just, how capabilities are created at the front end, but also how we approach systems design, systems development, how we look at automation and embed that into the core work processes. Next, if you look at the cloud platforms, they are expanding rapidly. I mean, I've been seeing this trend for the last 7 to 10 years now. And that pace of rapid innovation has kept up. And they're not just merely providing basic infrastructure. There are a number of sophisticated services that are being offered by the platforms. And this was not thought possible, a while back. And I think this trend will only continue. Then if you look at, with a number of these changes, the threat landscape has become complex as well. and there is a lot to worry. There is a lot to worry about, businesses that are collecting data, that are processing data, that are leveraging data to serve customers, to work with the ecosystem providers. And therefore, security now is an integral part of architecture and must not be a silo or an afterthought. Then, if you look at what's happening with the startup ecosystem, they are consistently demonstrating modern architectures and showing how disruption can be done. And there's an interesting survey done by PwC, which highlights that a lot of CEOs believe that if they continue on their current path, their businesses may not be viable 10 years from now, or maybe 5 years from now, because of the immense disruptive force and innovation that's happening within the startup ecosystem. So enterprises today have to innovate, have to continuously disrupt, should have technology that evolves. And a lot of that means there is ever mounting pressure on technology teams to support business innovation, right? It's not just about keeping the technology delivery happen, right? So that's really, our perspective on what's happening in the market. But how does it affect the architecture and systems? And this is where I would like to look at it in 4 key quadrants, right? The first one is looking at the architecture styles. We have evolved from monolithic applications to more flexible patterns, more adaptive methodologies, more reactive, event-driven architectures. And each of these have offered at various points and continue to offer distinct advantages and trade-offs. Then if you look at the second quadrant, which is development processes, these have matured from traditional waterfall approaches to more adaptive methodologies that enable rapid iteration and ensuring continuous feedback flows into the development process. The third quadrant, if you look at what's happening with the production tool chains, they have increasingly become sophisticated, evolving from the good old days, shared libraries, service brokers, to now complete DevOps tooling. And that is enabling a lot of automation and also reliability, because it's not about doing things fast, it's also about doing things right with the right quality assurance and controls. And lastly, if you look at the last quadrant, execution platforms, and these have seen tremendous evolution from physical hardware all the way to serverless architectures that are fundamentally changing how we think about infrastructure, right? But if this is the market and the context from an architecture and systems perspective, this brings a set of unique challenges for enterprises, right? And therefore, the client context and client situation is extremely important. What all this means for clients is there is a growing or continuing heterogeneous environment. That means enterprises have to manage multiple platforms and technologies. There is increasing complexity in the legacy systems. And there's a lot of risk associated with looking at modernizing these systems. But the longer that decision is delayed, there's mounting technical debt. That is becoming a strategic topic for leaders in IT and business. And all of this does not take away from the fact that there's constant pressure to innovate, automate, and maintain existing operations. So these challenges are not just technical issues, they are business imperatives, and that requires a fresh perspective on enterprise architecture. And so therefore, if you think about what does this complex landscape mean for enterprise architecture, how should we reimagine and approach enterprise architecture? In the next slide, I've tried to at least put my thoughts, which is how do you architect systems for sustained outcomes? Now, when we look at architecture, the driving force is it has to support a business capability, and it has to drive the necessary outcomes that are desired by the business. Now, there are a few ways we can look at what are the characteristics of future systems, modern systems. And then how do these characteristics translate into the design considerations? And ultimately, what does that mean in terms of business value? So if you look at today's systems, they're fundamentally different, right, from their predecessors. They're built from multiple components, which enables granular scaling and ability to update individual component parts. They're loosely coupled, allowing independent evolution and how you can assemble these parts. They have to be elastic and responsive. We've seen during COVID tremendous strain on technology systems to scale up, support more traffic, support more rapid changes. So how can the systems be elastic and responsive, adapt automatically to changing demands is key. You also want to build your systems on open standards, and you want to make sure that there is interoperability and flexibility in terms of how you can make your future decisions, build versus buy decisions, change decisions, etc. You of course want the modern systems to be more infrastructure agnostic. That means they run consistently across different environments. And lastly, composable architectures. And this to me is very, very important, especially if you look at certain sectors in India. There is a greater propensity to buy certain services. Businesses want to try out the new technology. They want to be the leaders in how they embrace and adopt new technology. They also want to try best of breed, what's best available out there, which means that you need to have that composability, ability to easily assemble new capabilities into your architecture. And, of course, all of this must be supported by resiliency, robustness, performance, scalability. So those are non-negotiables. So if you look at these characteristics of modern systems, and in a lot of ways, I think of them as not just technical, characteristics, but this is what drives business agility, right? These principles, these characteristics drive business agility. So therefore, how should we think of the design, right? And there are a couple of different ways in which this design manifests into certain practices and patterns. Of course, DevOps, I'll not, drain it, but it's very important to break down the silos between development and operations, implement the right tooling, the right culture, process, and people enablement to make that happen. Containerization ensures consistency between environments. It also allows for rapid deployments. Embracing microservices architecture, which means that you have that ability to innovate independently, right? Each team can continue to move rapidly, innovate independently. We also look at techniques like event sourcing for ensuring reliable data tracking, especially data systems that are very sensitive to latency, high amounts of traffic generated, etc. You want sophisticated caching and load balancing techniques so that some of the design characteristics that we discussed are addressed. Auto scaling and a lot of other patterns are equally important as well. Now, each of these design considerations for modern systems, so that the business gets what it wants, should have a clear benefit as well, right? And in a lot of these cases, the benefits are, scalability, efficiency, ensuring lock-ins, right? Today, there is a strategic concern within certain boards, within certain management teams in terms of how do you avoid these lock-ins, and how do you spread your risk, how do you spread your spend, and how do you maintain the relationships within the ecosystem. So that's important as well. So if we think of the architecture in the context of what do modern systems need, how do you enable them through the right design patterns and approaches, and therefore what are the business benefits? I think that gives a nice way of looking at what that continuous evolution should look like for architecture. If we go to the next slide, what I would like to cover is where do therefore if how do we make a start? How do enterprises make a start, right? How should they continue their journey? How should they course correct? And we look at it in a few dimensions. The first way to look at it is business relevance. So you have an application or you have a business system. What is the capability provided by that system? And is it delivering the business goals that you expect from that system? I think ensuring that business relevance is a key driver for saying, okay, where do I need to act? Where do I need to prioritize my investments? How do I start to build a case for it? Right. Second is innovation. Today, if the application is constraining the business in terms of realizing new capabilities, new features, then that is not the ideal place to be. And that definitely, no matter how risky and how old, the legacy attributes of that system, that needs to be tackled. Right. Third is looking at, speed to market and agility to adapt. Right. Sometimes, the system does its job well, but it's extremely hard to get the new releases out, to push new code into production, respond to business needs faster. And in today's market, in certain business segments, speed matters. And how fast can you deliver is going to determine whether we're going to win or lose in the market. So that is an important attribute as well in terms of looking at what the drivers for modernization are. Then you need to look at cost and complexity. But costs not just in terms of the tactical items, but more in terms of do you have the right skills? Are the skills that you need available in the market? Do you have a risk? How expensive is it to maintain what is existing out there versus adopting something, pivoting something new? So some of these are extremely important as well. And all of this is underpinned by the risk, by security risks. So if you have a system that is not sophisticated, poses a number of security risks, gives you compliance issues and challenges, you spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with regulators or security teams, just proving that things are working as they intend, that's a red flag as well. So these are some of the drivers for modernization, and that's how, from design to how do you then make these decisions, how do you start to look at the drivers within your application portfolio, and how do you make certain pragmatic plans for enterprise architecture evolution is important. And lastly, I just have one last slide here just to sort of round it off. So once you have, figured out the key drivers for modernization within your enterprise, your portfolio, application portfolio, let me tell you, as you can see in the next slide, it is all worth it, right? Where we have seen, and as PwC, we have partnered with, platform providers such as Google. We have worked with a number of enterprises, and where this has been done in the right way, we have seen tangible results that the business was very excited and proud of. 40% reduction in terms of how fast can you address and achieve your time to market. Increase in IT responsiveness. So business is generally more happy to partner with IT, not complaining that IT can't deliver. Quality, like DevOps to me is not about speed. DevOps to me is about embedding the right quality assurance controls, workflows, automation. So it's about increasing quality and a number of other benefits. So with that, now I would like to hand it back to Somik. And, when Sandeep talks, he will talk about the how. So if this is how you look at, approaching the journey, then there is a lot of detail that goes with how do you do it, right? And therefore, how can, Google Cloud Platform help in this journey with its solutions? So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Somik.
Thanks so much for that, Vamsi. I think a great presentation, very specific points, very succinctly put out there. And yes, you've touched upon some really important points out there, which I would want to bring up during our later round of questioning, especially the factor on the necessity for continuous disruption, and the fact that you touched upon longer the delay, it actually leads to mounting technical debt. So yeah, I mean that's something I would want to revisit. So I'm going to keep that in the parking lot for now. But let's hear the how part of the story now. And to do that, let me hand it over to Sandeep. Sandeep, over to you, please.
Thank you, Somik and Vamsi. Fantastic talk. I could plus one to pretty much everything that you said, and you have made my life much more simpler, because then I don't need to spend time on all of the benefits of doing enterprise architecture right. So yeah, amazing talk, Vamsi. Hi everyone, my name is Sandeep Agarwal. I am a security specialist at Google. My job is to help organizations strengthen their security and compliance posture with Google Cloud. Well, the reason I am here today is not to tell you how to do security, because security can get as complicated as you want it to be. My job today here is to tell you that, as Vamsi mentioned, if you do good, simple enterprise architecture, when you do it right, these architectures are inherently secure. So you don't have, if you do your enterprise architecture right, which means you do your DevOps right, you do your serverless right, containerized solutions, microservices right, you automatically are pretty secure. So the amount of additional effort that you need to put on security for meeting any specific compliance objectives, etc., would be bare minimum. In other words, you don't need to be a security expert to be secure in Google Cloud. Okay, so I don't think any one of us today doubts that every enterprise wants to digitally transform themselves. Compared to a decade earlier, when every CTO, CIO, CISO, CXO who I used to meet, everybody questioned what is cloud and why cloud. Compared to today, where we are in a situation where most enterprises are not just on cloud, but are on multiple cloud platforms. So the question today is not about how do you do that transformation. It just migrating to the cloud does not itself mean that you have modernized and adopted you have reimagined your enterprise architecture. Modernization only comes when an enterprise goes one step further beyond just migrating to the cloud by benefiting from cloud native architecture. So I'll spend some time on what does truly cloud native architecture mean, especially in the context of Google Cloud. Before I do that, just to level set, what this slide shows you are different paths to migrating to the cloud. Again, this is pretty standard approaches, which no matter what cloud platform you are talking to, these are the options that you have. Most enterprises would start at rehost and replatform. That is where most of the first steps we see in the industry are taken, which is completely understandable. You want to take those first baby steps, get used to a cloud platform, make the new cloud platform, your chosen cloud platform or chosen cloud platforms, your home. But if you stop right there, you solve only some of the problems that come with traditional enterprise architectures. But if you truly re-architect your applications by refactoring them or rebuilding them, that is when you take the most advantage of the cloud. And these advantages are something which Vamsi has already covered, so I'll not spend a lot of time on them, but you can see that these benefits of refactoring and adopting cloud native architectures, these benefits accrue across all of the pillars of any good architecture. Whether you talk about speed, whether you talk about agility, reliability, security, and even cost optimization. Good architectures are inexpensive architectures. So many enterprises believe that you can achieve a good architecture only if you throw in a heavily licensed product, which promises a lot and costs a bomb. Actually, it's an anti-pattern, because the best architectures that I have seen in my view are extremely cost efficient. So I'll move on to Google Cloud now, talking specifically about Google Cloud. Similarly, we have got, like most cloud platforms, there are several paths to support a successful cloud migration on Google Cloud. But as I said earlier, the true benefits accrue only when you adopt the SaaS and PaaS services offered by a cloud. These benefits are achieved by offloading most of your undifferentiated responsibilities to Google as a cloud provider. Now, the parallel that I draw with many of the FSI customers who I typically interact with is that what a bank is to financial services, what does a bank do differently, what an individual is not able to do? A bank has the incentives, the skills, the resources, the economies of scale to do financial services great in a reliable, performance, secure manner. That is what cloud computing brings to technology. We are incentivized. We have got some of the best talent globally. We have got enormous amount of resources. We can put billions of dollars behind architecting a data center which is planet scale. And we have got this economies of scale because we are serving millions of customers. We automatically benefit from the economies of scale. So a dollar that we put in as investment has got a massive ROI, which allows us to further put in a lot of more dollars behind it, because the scale at which we are doing it is amazing. And you as customers simply inherit this platform and gain from the tremendous reliability, performance benefits, security that come along with it. You don't have to start from scratch. You just inherit all of these advantages. So on this page, what you see is a typical reference architecture for an enterprise application. It is simple, it is secure, it is reliable, performant, and cost efficient. I'll spend a few minutes on explaining this architecture to you. For those of you who are watching, you can take note of this, take a screenshot or whatever. You can see that you start with, you start with identity. And again, this is where, when it comes to security or any cloud adoption, identity is perhaps the most important thing that you would do as you are moving on to the cloud. So you start with identity, federated. If you are an enterprise, you probably have an identity system of your own. The best thing for you is to use the benefits of SSO, federate the cloud provider's identity system with your own existing identity system. Then you use things like auth policies. An auth policies in Google Cloud is nothing but a guardrail. So you define what behavior is appropriate for you and what is unacceptable for you. For example, if you are a regulated customer, you might want to have all of your data located in specific regions to meet data sovereignty and data localization requirements. You can achieve this by simple configurations that can prevent anybody from even making a mistake of using a region which is not one of your permitted regions. Then you go to IAM. Again, IAM super important, no matter which cloud platform, whether you're using IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS. If you don't do IAM well, you can pretty much know that your environment is not secure. In other words, many of you may have heard this term called as the identity is the new perimeter, especially in cloud. So you do good IAM, make sure that you have just-in-time access privileges. You've got the least privileged roles, fine-grained permissions, and all of that. Then you create your traditional network setup where your workloads or your applications will be hosted. And when it comes to choosing your platform on which you want to deploy your application, you will see there's a lot of focus on containerized platforms within Google Cloud. So you see Cloud Run, which offers running containers as a service, to GKE, which is a managed Kubernetes engine that is managed by Google Cloud, where you can again orchestrate and run your own containerized applications. You've got PaaS services like Google Cloud Storage, which offers almost infinite scale object storage. You've got databases like Spanner, which allow you to do multi-region writes and read performance, and can even offer you zero RTO and RPO. You also have BigQuery, which is again a serverless data warehouse. So no matter what your application is, whether it's a transactional system, whether it's an analytics-based system, you have a huge choice of compute platforms and database platforms on which you can architect your application. While you can do all of the things that you would have traditionally done in on-premises, if you don't leverage these capabilities of Google Cloud or any other cloud provider who's giving you such similar offerings, you are effectively recreating the same problems. The only difference is instead of on-premises, you are doing it on the cloud. On number 6, you see an interface with which you publish those applications to the world. You would notice that all of the things that you have put on 5 can be made private, which means nobody from the internet can access them until and unless you have exposed them through a set of load balancers, which could be regional or global, and that come with firewall protection, whether application level firewalls or layer 3, layer 4 level firewalls. Then you have got data security controls. If you see number 7, you've got Cloud KMS, which allows you to encrypt all of your data in the cloud using keys that you own and manage. You have got DLP controls, which allow you to detect and anonymize any personal data in the cloud. DPDPA is a big thing with Indian customers today. So you can use these services to achieve and meet your privacy requirements. Logging, monitoring, these are again traditional pillars for any enterprise system. You need to be having traceability, the ability to find out what went wrong, where did it go wrong, and the ability to support any incident investigations. So you have inbuilt logging and monitoring solutions which don't require an arm and a leg to implement. You've got security command center. Again, the one thing that you possibly need to monitor all of the things that are running inside your cloud environment. Because what I firmly believe is cloud environments are great. They allow you to move fast with a lot of agility, flexibility, and speed. But if you don't do it well, it can have a very bad side to it, because even the bad things can happen very fast. So when you move to the cloud, you need to have good visibility and control over your environment, so that if and when things go wrong, which if you are talking to any security person, they will say you that there will be a time when things will go wrong. It is not a matter of preventing all of the bad things. It is about when those bad things happen, are you in a position to be able to detect them before the bad actors do? So to summarize, modernizing applications on Google Cloud can have several advantages. Number 1, you use a containerized microservices-based architecture, which will allow you to have tremendous amount of flexibility, independence, agility, and speed. As Vamsi was mentioning, you should not be making a monolith application which is tightly coupled. You want different components of your application to be loosely coupled, so that not only can you deliver and add features in each of those components with the speed that they want, but you can also scale up those independent components as they need to scale without having to scale everything else that come along with it. Secondly, with Google Cloud, you pretty much have access to a planet scale computer, which allows you to scale up your applications massively. it is pretty much the same infrastructure that powers Google Cloud's own applications and infrastructure. Several of the apps that you and I use on a daily basis. Thirdly, Google Cloud's capabilities in data and AI are known to everyone. We are the pioneers, some of Googlers who have recently been awarded with Nobel Prizes in subjects ranging from physics, chemistry, AI. We had created some of the technologies that underpin today's Gen AI capabilities. Finally, you lower your TCO by using open source system. You don't get yourself locked into expensive and onerous licensing regimes, as Vamsi had alluded to. And you have the ability to scale your infrastructure vertically and horizontally so that you can closely match what is your demand. So a lot of the excess costs in enterprise applications are attributed to, hey, I have an event coming up in January, February, and March, which requires my infrastructure to be at a particular level. And because I want to meet that demand, I would have to run that infrastructure all year around. One of the key reasons why cloud became popular is because of the pay per use and the scale as per demand features that cloud brings in. So your applications and your architectures need to be leveraging and maximizing on those features in the cloud. And then finally, if you ask me what is the icing on the cake, it is the vast security by design infrastructure that you simply inherit by being on the platform. Google Cloud offers default encryption of data at rest and in transit. These are some of the examples which I'm taking. Without you having to do a thing, every piece of data that you store on any service in Google Cloud is by default encrypted at rest. And when data travels within our infrastructure, even within a single region, within a VPC that you create, at the hardware and infrastructure level, we encrypt that data through a technology called as ALTS. We have a planet scale network which is known to have defended the largest DDoS attacks known to the technology world. We have amazing transparency and compliance features, and in short, we believe we have the most trusted cloud platform. So with that, I'll hand it over back to Soumik to take it from here.
Thanks so much, Sandeep. And yes, you touched upon some really relevant and very, very interesting points that I wish to discuss with you later. And yeah, I mean, the point that you brought up around IAM and privileged access, just 3 or 4 weeks back, we saw one of India's, biggest insurance companies landing up, compromising about 7.24 terabytes of data, highly sensitive data, because an insider sold access. And one very, very interesting point, Sandeep, that you brought out was that the best architectures that you've observed, is what you said, are the cheapest ones. So yeah, we're going to explore that bit as well. But to start with, let's take a look at, where or how is traditional architecture holding us back. So Vamsi, I'll start with you. To play the devil's advocate, traditional architecture, you have, a lot of benefits. You have stability, you've got reliability, compatibility, and of course, you've got cost predictability. But then given the environment that we are currently operating in, what's your view on traditional architecture? Are they going to be falling short in achieving these business outcomes that they want to achieve going forward?
No, absolutely. I think, if you look at, there are 3 or 4 ways to think about, where does it really fall short, or where does it really leave a lot lacking, right? In terms of what businesses desire. One is it's too slow and rigid, right? Today, the speed at which business is conducted, especially, we are now a connected world, right? And I would like to, borrow from Friedman's work. They said, world has become flat, then it has become fast, and now it's becoming deep. So if you look at, we are a connected world, we are flat, right? And the speed of doing business is demands you to move at a certain pace, and old systems can't deliver that
Right.
because it takes too long to, A, see what the business wants, and B, how do you respond to it in days and hours, not months and weeks, right? So that's first area. But then it also the older systems were engineered in silos, right? There was an IT team, there was a business team, and increasingly you're seeing that there is an evolution of DevOps, BizOps. And BizOps, while being a distinct capability, while DevOps looks at, am I doing things, with the right quality assurance controls, with the right automation, with the right speed, release velocity. BizOps is really about whatever you're doing, is it adding value to business? So, really mature enterprises are looking at, combining these two distinct capabilities of bringing DevOps and BizOps together and seeing, are we doing value? And fundamentally, older systems, the way they were engineered, it doesn't work in today's context. And, today the focus is about innovation. And newer systems are built for speed, innovation, experimentation, without compromising security or spending, relatively large amounts of money, right? Older systems are built around standardization. So that's the fundamental difference, standardize versus innovate, right? And I think, to me, these are some of the areas where we see that, there is that, pressure on older systems to deliver.
All right. Thanks for that, Kamsi. Let me now check with the security expert. Sandeep, your take on this. Traditional architecture, what's its impact on security? Is it able to keep up with the current demands?
I think if you have a fairly large security team,
Mhm.
there is a lot of security tools available in the market. So basically, if you have got a large amount of resources, both in terms of like skilled resources, as well as money into buying tools, and if you do them well, you can. It is. I'll not say that it is an insurmountable problem. There are a lot of big, large organizations that are reasonably secure. They have big security budgets. They have got huge security teams. But it is only some few organizations who have that luxury. The adversaries today are getting smarter. They have pretty much access to the same tools. The good thing is that good defense side of things are also improving. So it is not an insurmountable problem, but it is getting more and more difficult. For example, we live in an environment today where financial resources are getting scarce, and it's going to get even more tougher. Not every organization has got a lot of resources, both in terms of money and cybersecurity talent, as all of us know, is getting very difficult to hire and retain. So there are challenges. It is doable, but only for if you are, one of the top largest enterprises.
Yeah, I was just about to point it out, Sandeep, when you said, if they've got big security teams, that's a very big if, considering the kind of shortage that we're dealing with. Now, Sandeep, I'll continue with this topic on security as well, because another conversation that we are seeing is about, the right kind of security framework. Off the top of your head, if you could tell us 4 things that IT leaders must consider when it comes to zeroing down, selecting that right security framework. How do you go about it?
So, again, a framework is a very, gray word. So no matter, like if you ask me as a security nerd, advising a security professional or a compliance professional, I would respond maybe, look at your industry, choose whether a PCI DSS fits you or a SOC fits you, or who your customers are, what are the compliance regimes that are applicable to you, etc., etc. But my answer, because you mentioned if you're asking an IT leader, security leadership should think more about the cultural aspects of security. You can buy the fanciest of tools, but it's very difficult to get good culture and replicate. And in my experience, what separates a more secure organization from a less secure organization is not the budgets or the tools that they have, but about how good they are in culture. And for me, there are a few ABCDEs of good culture. Number one, A, automate. The more you can automate and have everything as code, you can overcome a lot of problems related to less skilled resources, because if you have a few skilled resources who can automate well, you can overcome that problem. Number two, B for business. Understand that your value as a security team is to maximize the business value of security. If you have a security team which has a framework and they just do security for the sake of security, you will not get much ahead.
Mhm.
C is for complexity, as Vamsi had mentioned once. Cut down on the fancy elements that you don't understand. Don't just put a fancy tool because it's expensive and you don't know what it does. Cut down on complexity. Democratize. Make everybody an owner of security. Make everybody accountable for doing good security in whatever they do. E for escalate. When bad things happen, disclose. Share it with the right stakeholders, whether it's internally or maybe even externally to your regulator. And lastly, F, have fun. Like, security is pretty interesting space. So don't forget to have fun, learn new things, and yeah, try out different things.
All right. The have fun element is going to be a little the hardest to accomplish, given the kind of task that our security leaders have. But yeah, great points out there. Now, Vamsi, I would want to go to you with this entire journey of application modernization. Now, you touched upon that in in your section as well. What would you say? If you're looking at it from a PwC perspective, what is PwC's roadmap to application modernization, especially if you could touch upon the concepts of continuous improvement? How do you achieve that?
Absolutely. And I think, we briefly covered this earlier, but if I were to simplify, one of the ways to look at this is in our good old favorite people, process, technology sort of dimensions, right?
Mhm.
So from a people perspective, it's extremely important that, you have a growth mindset in people, because a lot of times I have been part of conversations saying, look, I have a limitation, rather than invest in addressing that limitation, skill limitation, people limitation. I would rather make a choice which is relatively safer and risk free. So I'll continue with the current system or the current architecture. I think that boils down to mindset, right? So my first point is, have a growth mindset when you look at enterprise architecture.
Mhm.
How should it evolve? How should it grow? How should it expand and support business of the future, right? And when you bring that lens, then you realize that, look, I need to upskill my teams. I need to have the right operating model to support the new ways of working, agile ways of working, DevOps, SRE, and also award a culture of innovation, right? Because more often than not, we tend to, have that balance of, look, I have to run the system, I have to run the business. So therefore, a lot of transaction oriented, measurement oriented, decisions are made in terms of how you reward teams. And somewhere this culture of innovation doesn't get the view that it so deserves, right, in this
Right.
environment. Then when you look at process, implementing agile governance, the right operating model is extremely critical. Have the right mix of project versus product thinking, right? So the discipline you need to build a product, build a capability, build a system, versus what you need to run a project. Two very different things. I think you need to get that balance right in terms of your process and what you're setting it up for. And lastly, technology, right? And this is where, when you do cloud right, I have a lot of conviction that it can be done. And I agree with Sandeep earlier that when you do it right, then it can be inexpensive, but highly effective. Inexpensive doesn't mean ineffective. It can be very effective, it can be inexpensive, but you have to do it right, which means the upfront cost of modernizing something, while it comes with a certain set of risks, but the rewards, and I go back to some of my favorite examples. Uh, we did a lot of analysis to see, what does cost of operating a modernized system look like versus, you're just tweaking it, rehosting it, you are, re-platforming at best certain elements versus you're completely, remaking some of these systems, right? And then you see a 10x difference. But somewhere the focus is always on the initial 2 hours, and that tends to be not that interesting, right, from a cost perspective. So look at technology, embrace cloud native. Cloud native makes the journey easy, right? It also is the first step to doing it right. So to me, those are the three things to look at from a roadmap perspective. And as PwC, we have a number of examples where we have helped organizations go on this journey and realize benefits.
Right, right. Thanks for that, Vamsi. Now, Sandeep, 5 words I took away from Vamsi of the if cloud is done right. Now I'm going to throw some examples at you. Capital One 2021, Uber 2016, T-Mobile 2021, Tesla 2020. 2 things common in them. They're all Fortune 100 companies. 2, they all fell prey to data breaches due to cloud misconfigurations. So these, billion-dollar companies with all the bells and whistles in terms of security, what are they not able to get right in terms of cloud operations? How do you get a plug on cloud misconfigurations?
Yeah, I think I covered this piece when I was talking. So again, cloud is an amazing piece of tech, allows you to move very fast, but it also allows a lot of bad things to happen very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the key over here is to have good visibility and control, as you mentioned. Now, how do you solve for it? Anybody who's been following the security market and industry researchers like Gartner, etc., there is a growing market for a capability called as CSPM.
Mm-hmm.
With the cloud adoption tool, this market has taken up. So you have a lot of security. Almost every security company that I know of wants to have a piece of this pie. So one option for any customer is to have and choose from one of these third-party CSPM, CNAP tools. The added benefit for some of these tools is they are multi-cloud in nature, and some of them are good. However, if you ask me, my recommendation, even if a customer is multi-cloud, is to always maximize the native visibility and control features that are offered by each cloud provider that they are on. So the reason I say this is because native tools are low cost, they are very easy to implement, low effort, they are integrated in the fabric of the cloud plane. And again, there is a vested interest in every cloud provider to make sure their customers are secure. So you are drawing on the cloud provider's interest to make you as a customer secure. And every cloud provider knows their environment the best. It's very difficult for a third-party tool to. So while there is a market and each customer should choose whatever works best for them, but I have a very strong bias in favor of native tools because of the reasons I mentioned. Again, I have seen some of the fanciest tools being procured but not implemented well. So what good is a tool? There are many famous sayings that Microsoft Excel is an amazing tool, but most people use it to create tables, right?
Right.
It's like using it for 0.001% of what it's capable of. So native tools is what I recommend. If security teams want a consolidated dashboard, that is when they can integrate the output of each of these native tools into a single notification system or a ticketing engine that they are using to track all of them and manage them. And if you also remember, I had mentioned something called as guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
Call them org policies in Google Cloud. I come from AWS. In AWS, we used to call them service control policies. Each cloud provider also offers a large set of guardrails which can help you prevent a lot of those mistakes. While I don't prefer over-indexing on the prevention bit of it, because you also need to make innovation happen, as Vamsi was saying, so but wherever possible, where things which are non-negotiable for your business, which are like catastrophic errors, you can pretty much prevent them by just making sure that those security guardrails have been turned on in your system. And of course, again, if you are smart enough and you do things like infrastructure as code, you can do a lot of shift left security. Again, it's very common in security circles today. So you do a lot of things good in design and while you are creating your infrastructure, and do even things like policy and code. So yeah, there are a lot of options. You have to that effort, but if you do them, it's not an impossible task.
Got it. All right. So the folks watching us live, you can you can share your questions with us in the comment section. Our team is going to pick up those questions and we can have them addressed for you right away. But for now, I've got a question for Vamsi. Vamsi, one of the things that you showed in your presentation was your ability to actually help your partners achieve 40% faster time to market. What is PwC's secret sauce to this particular achievement? Because you were looking at business leaders who want things done yesterday. So how can you achieve agility and rapid transformation without having to compromise on security? What's PwC's way?
I think first is identifying the right set of business capabilities, right?
Okay.
We talked about capabilities that are relevant to business, that have high value, and that have probably the most risk. So therefore, the case for change is there. So that's the first thing.
Right.
The second is, once you have established and you have placed the right capabilities that need modernization and that could benefit from modernization, right? Because these are expensive programs, so there's a lot for the business, in terms of the value that is desired and whether the program delivers on that value. So you have to pick your right systems, right? Second is, where there is value, the conversation is on value, right? Meaning, cost is not the factor, because if the business sees value in a certain capability, look, I'm able to go to market faster, I'm able to improve my quality, so therefore I'm able to price better, I'm able to make my sales engine more robust, I'm able to target better, I'm able to personalize better. No matter what your goal is, if you pick the right problems to solve, then the conversation is not about cost. The conversation is about, once I solve this problem, I'm creating a competitive differentiation for my business. And that, I think, is important, right? Because when you start to modernize, when you start to look at some of these technologies, when you bring in that kind of a lens to the conversation, then it tends to be a lot more value accretive rather than cost focused. That's the second thing in terms of making the case for change and having the right set of value metrics, right? To excite the business, right? To galvanize the business behind that program. Okay. Then, of course, robust architecture, right? We talked about some of the principles. We have a very effective methodology in terms of how do you carefully architect the system, keeping business outcomes in mind. So therefore, if you look at the slide that I presented, it was really about architecting for outcomes, right? And the outcomes drive your decisions, because you have that value in your mind in terms of how do you want to go about it. And then, of course, it comes down to, having the right set of investments and partnerships, right? Partners are extremely important in this journey. Modernization programs require that collaboration, right? And can do, a mindset between teams. So that's why with our partners like Google, with other partners, OEMs, because some of these systems also need to work well with the ecosystem. So that partnership is equally important as well. And lastly, our people, right? We put a lot of value in our people. We invest a lot in terms of making sure that they are the best domain experts in the given industry. They are extremely familiar through the various stages of those evolutions, product evolutions, and they have done this before. So I think so together, when you look at all of these, that's really why a lot of the programs, are successful, and that's how we do it in PwC.
All right. Vamsi, while I have you with us right now, I would want to pose the next question as well. And, that is about TCO and technical debt. You said agility is one way to actually beat the possibility of accruing technical debt. If you could tell us a little bit about, how can they go about slashing total cost of ownership?
I think make incremental bets.
Okay.
Constant evolution. So, in certain places, this has already been proven. We are seeing certain practices like how do you hollow out your core, especially when it comes to banking systems. How do you create systems that support your entire value chain, be it customer onboarding, be it servicing, be it your back office operations, etc. So have a mindset of continuous modernization, which means you pick incremental bets tied to clear business value rather than a full big bang program, right? That's first. Second is have the right governance metrics, right? That's very important. And lastly, adopt platform thinking, right? When you adopt platform thinking, the benefit you get is you are building a capability that can be reused.
Right.
For example, you want to integrate with a payment provider, right? How do you really bring in a platform thinking so that you build that capability and maybe multiple parts of your business can leverage it? So reusability becomes a dimension, right? So avoid point solutions and think of your entire sort of capability and capability map in terms of reusability. So to me, those are sort of quick points. I know we are maybe out of time, but that's how I would go about it.
All right. Thank you for that. Sandeep, quick takeaways, your quick 2 cents on what can CISOs and CIOs do on maximizing security investments?
Sure, Soumik. I think I've tried to cover it earlier. Like, see, if your goal is to maximize return on investment, there are 2 sides to the coin. There's a numerator and there is a denominator. So one approach is to increase the value that you derive for a given amount of investment. Or the second could be identify or lower the investment that you put in to get the same value out of a tool. The first option is about discipline, implementation, rigor. As I had mentioned, you buy a fancy tool, but you have to put in a lot of discipline, implementation, rigor. If you do that, you will get good return on investment. Oftentimes, I've seen teams spend 9 months selecting the best product, but give themselves only 3 months for implementing it. That is bad return on investment.
Right.
The second approach is where cloud native tools shine. As I have been harping about in my talk so far, most cloud native features are easy to understand, easy to implement, low cost, if not free of cost. A lot of security features in any cloud platform are available free of charge. Of course, they are not fancy. They are not going to cover 100% of your use cases. But if you keep them simple and you realize that, the best security need not come from fancy third-party tools, cloud native tools are an amazing way to get a breathtaking return on investment. Just adopt them. Make the most use of what cloud providers are throwing at you. Of course, if they fit your need, adopt them. And these features are also continuously evolving. So you continuously benefit as cloud providers keep on building and adding new features. So yeah, that's my tip to a CISO or CIO. Yeah, just benefit all of the good things that are coming your way.
All right. That was Sandeep's quick 2 cents on maximizing ROI from security investments. Thank you, Sandeep, and thank you, Vamsi, for sharing your expertise with us, your observations, and those set of best practices for our CIOs and CISOs to follow. Now, we've got a feedback form that we would want you to fill. There's a QR code that's going to be appearing on your screen, so please scan that and share your feedback form with us. A recording of this webinar is going to be available on our ET CIO site. So for those who want to revisit those pearls of wisdom shared by our experts today, you can always take a look at our website. Again, thanks so much, Sandeep, and thanks so much, Vamsi. It was an absolute pleasure hosting you. And audience, thanks for tuning in, and do fill up the feedback forms. You guys have a great evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye, Vamsi. See you, Somik. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.